Hey everyone, Ray here with Ringsworks. An unexpected project came my way today. This is a 2006 Nissan Frontier. That's not good. If you want to see how I fix it, stay tuned and I'll show you. Let me go grab some tools. Alright, let's get the wheel off. Wow, that bearing is shot. Alright. I'm going to bring you in closer to show you what we're going to do. Okay, let's get the cotter pin off. I'm actually surprised that the Nissan doesn't use a castle nut on here, where the cotter pin would go through it and keep it from spinning. Actually, but they don't. So, and it's going to have to be a deep socket, I think. Oh, I think that's the size, 32 millimeter, but I really need a deep one. Let me go look around. Alright, so 15 minutes and $15 later, I've got a deep 32 millimeter socket. I lucked out. They just put this on the shelf today and they only had one. Literally put it on the shelf 10 minutes before I got there. You'll notice I put a jack stand under here. It's on the frame. It's not touching. I didn't lower this onto the jack stand, but it's within 1/8 of an inch. So if this was to lower or something happened, it would land on that jack stand. Now this nut is torqued over 100 pounds, 100 foot-pounds. So I'm going to attempt to get it off with this. If I can't, I will show you another way to do it. If I do manage to get it off with this, I will explain the other way that you can get it off. So let's see if it'll do it. Oh, it might do it if I go in the right direction. Alright. Alright, I lucked out and was able to get it off. So, whoops, I'm going to put this back on for a minute. Explain something. So this acts like it's like hammer action, bang, 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 to turn it off. If I didn't have that, and I tried to put a socket on here and use like a breaker bar or something and spin it, it would spin. The whole lug would spin, or the whole hub and everything would spin. You can see that spinning action. So if this didn't work, what I would have done is I would have put the tire back on. First thing I would have done is I would take that center cap off. It just pushes off on the back side, push it off. I'd put the wheel back on, lower the car to the ground, then all the weight's on it. Then you can take a breaker bar or that socket, and then you can loosen that nut. And in fact, that's probably how we'll put it back on, because we'll have to torque it, and I can't accurately measure torque with this, so that is probably how we'll put it back on. Anyway, that's how you do it if you don't have an air gun. Okay, with the axle nut off, you'll notice that the axle is pushing through here. I'm actually surprised it did that. If it didn't go through there, you put the nut back on, make it flush with this surface here, take like a block of wood and a hammer and pop it a few times until you get this loose. So in my case, I lucked out, I guess. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take off the caliper. And we're going to do that by removing this bolt right here. And there's one underneath the same way. Don't take these off. You don't need to take those off. You're not doing a brake job. So leave those alone, assuming your brakes are in good shape. So I'm going to take this one off and the one on the bottom. I don't know where the torque spec is on those yet, but they are on there tight. I know that. So we'll get those off now, and it is a 19 millimeter socket that we're going to use. So let's get set up and take those off. I'm going to turn the wheel, make it a little bit easier access to that, to those bolts, I think. Yeah, I think that's a little better now. I said these are tight. They're usually really, really tight. Well, let's find out. Yeah. There's one. I could do this with the that, but I actually want to feel how tight these are. I haven't looked up the torque specs on it yet. Okay. It wasn't quite as tight. I'm doing that the slow way. Before I take that all the way off, I'm going to go get something to hang the caliper off of. So we don't want it dangling off the brake line. I'll be right back. Alright, I just put a piece of wire up here. Alright, might have to readjust that. Now we can pull off the rotor, which looks like it's in great shape. Okay. Alright. I'm gonna go take a break for a second and stand up because my knees are hurting. And I'll come right back and we'll pull that hub off. Okay, I want to show you real quick. So the wheel speed connectors right here. This is what's attached to the hub. This wiring harness here. That's attached. That'll be part of the new hub. But we've got to get that apart. And Nissan makes some shitty connectors. I got to tell you, I don't like these usually. The way it works is, this one's been messed with before, so at some point it's been off for some reason. But this tab here on the top, you push it in that way. I don't know if you can see it going in, but you push that in, and then you got to work that top part off, and it can be a booger. This one actually came out pretty easy. Yeah, it's been off before, I think. Okay, now this is on here. There's a couple little clips. The new sensor came with new ones, so we can just get this off of here. I really need a bigger screwdriver. I'll go get a bigger screwdriver. Okay. Basically, I'm just going to bust these off. They're little plastic tabs. stayed on. You don't need to watch me struggle with that. I'm going to take it off, but let me show you what it is. It is. This is the new one. It's just those two tabs right here. Just go through a couple holes. It just pops in. So I'm going to bust that other one off now. All right, I went ahead and moved the caliper over to the other side. The reason I had the caliper on that side was so that I could get the camera in here to show you guys that electrical connector. So there's where those two holes are where the new connector pushes into. So anyway, so this just runs down through here. It's got a mount here and a mount here. They're little rubber grommet things that just slide out, and then they come down and attach to the wheel hub. So now we got to get that wheel hub out of there. There's 4 bolts. You can see them here, one here, but you access them from the back side, and then there's two more on the bottom. Let me see if I can get in here and I'll show you. And they are 17 millimeter size, I think. All right, let's see if I can get you here. Okay, so here's the 2 bottom ones, and then I don't know if you can see or not. Yeah, there's the 2 top ones, and you probably have to turn the wheel back and forth to get to them. You're gonna need an extension of some sort as well. So let me get set up and we'll pull those off. Okay, let's get the 4 bolts out. I was able to, I believe, get to this like so. So the torque spec on these, everything I'm finding is 44 foot-pounds. I talked to another mechanic about it, and he says crank them on as tight as you can get them. They're definitely not on very tight right now. Don't know if that's factory or not. I'm going to turn the wheel the other direction to get to the other bolts better, easier. So I don't know, I'm going to have to look into that torque spec stuff on these particular bolts, because they're definitely not that tight. I'm going to guess they probably are around 40 pounds. Well, alright, I'm going to change this up. I can't get to that one that way. Alright, I'm going to have to bring up a different thing, a ratchet or something. Okay, in order to get a straight shot at this lower bolt, I had to switch to a 3/8 drive. The 1/2 inch was all just too bulky. I just couldn't get in there, and I can't get in there with the impacts either. So I had to switch to this, but these are really not that tight. So see, all right, that one's broken loose. Okay. All right, I'll spin those off and then we'll bring it back and we'll get that hub off. All right, I got the other 2 bolts out. I also cut the wiring harness right here. What that'll allow is, one, to get this off, but I'm going to leave this all attached. That way when we put the new hub on, we can easily run the wires up. We'll just pull one part off at a time, and then it'll be easy to figure out. So there are pullers. I think you could probably rig up to get this off, but we already know we're not going to reuse it, so I'm just going to give it a few love taps from behind with a BFH. Almost off. I hit the shield with the hammer. Straighten that out. But there's the hub off. Alright. Disassembly done. Let's get these surfaces cleaned up. And then we'll start reassembling. And I'll take a hammer and straighten out the damages I did on that thing. Alright, let's clean these mating surfaces and area, a little bit of brake clean. Don't get this in your boots and suspension parts that have grease and stuff in them, because it'll eat the grease away. We're just going to get it cleaned up a little bit, get the dirt off, and then we'll come back and clean up the mating surfaces. Stuff works wonders. Alright, a little surface cleanup with the red Scotch-Brite pad on a die grinder. You could do this by hand if you had to. Let's fix my oopsie real quick. Alright, I wanted to just show you real quick so you can see I got this mating surface clean. I also pull that back out. I also cleaned the surface of the axle. And what I did with that, I used a wire wheel on my drill. Clean that surface there. Also with that, I cleaned this surface here of the rotor. And what I'm doing now is cleaning this surface here. And you can see where I've hit it already and where I haven't touched it yet. And with that one, I'm using a smaller wheel, just because it allows me to get in there. And you can maneuver this thing around as you need to get access. So I'm going to finish cleaning that up now. You can see the rust coming off. And if you switch directions on your wire wheel, now and then it'll start biting in harder. Okay, we're getting to the fun part now. Let's start to reassemble this thing. First thing I'm going to do is the old wiring harness here. I'm going to get the first grommet out. That way it's out of the way. So when we put the new one on, I'll be ready. Now I'm going to take we need to put some grease on this spline, and I'm going to put a very thin coat of grease around all the mating surfaces. And I'm just using a high temp disc brake wheel bearing grease. You say, Ray, you've been wearing gloves the whole time. Now you're in grease and you're not wearing gloves. Because sometimes you just need to feel things. And I don't mean I need to feel the grease. I mean, I need to feel what's happening with it. So get just a good even coat on that. And then we'll do a very light, this is more for corrosion prevention I think than anything else. Because if you notice when we took it off, there was a lot of rust in here. And that's not good. Again, it's just a very, very light coat. I'll put a little bit on this surface of the axle. There was a lot of rust building up on this axle as well. Okay, now we'll get this inner surface that we just finished cleaning, where the hub mates to. Hopefully this will help a little bit stop it from getting too bad too quick again. Eventually it will rust. That's the nature of bare metal. But okay, now we can put the hub on. So, let's see, this goes this way. And we're going to put our, actually, you know what, I'll be right back. I want to readjust this camera because I'm not sure you're going to be able to see it, so give me a second here. Oh, I think you can see it. Okay. So the wiring harness has got to go through that hole. Like so. And then I'm going to start sliding this in. Now I'm going to reach from behind and get at least a bolt or two started. Hopefully. It's a little difficult to get it to line up at the angle that I'm at. Okay, I got that one started. No, I didn't. Oh, dang it. Let's see if I can get this ratchet on there. Get this spinning a little easier. Alright, now it started. Okay. I got that started. Now I'm going to get the other started, and I'll be right back. Okay, I got all 4 bolts started. I want to show you something. You see this gap here? And you can see the bolts coming through here. So all of them are just loosely started. There's no tension yet. But what I'm going to do, you don't want to just tighten one bolt down at a time all the way in, because this is a bit of a press fit. So, sort of like when you're doing lug nuts. You want to go like here, then the bottom, and then up here, and then this bottom, and just do a little at a time to get this thing squared in properly. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm just going to tighten one bolt at a time and just, ease it in a little bit on each bolt. Try to keep this thing squared up so I can just watch this gap while I'm doing it. And I can also watch how far the bolts are coming through. So I know that they're all basically the same. So a little at a time. Get it squared up, and then we'll come back and torque it. Okay, got the hub all tightened up and squared. Now we're going to torque them. Now everything I could find says 44 foot-pounds is the torque on those 4 bolts in the back. To me it seems a little light. And the guy that owns this truck called his mechanic that apparently did the other side not too long ago. I'm actually setting his torque wrench to 44 pounds right now. He called his mechanic, and his mechanic told, and because I asked the question, I said it seemed a little bit light to me, and he said, quote, torque those fuckers as tight as you can get them. I disagree with that, because a couple reasons. There's a reason the factory says 44 foot-pounds. They know what those bolts are made out of, and they are supposed to have all this engineered and know what they're doing. So think about when you tighten a bolt down, the tighter you spin that thing, what it's doing is it's pulling that bolt, it's stretching it. So as a bolt sits there and stretches over time, that stretching action is going to weaken the steel of the bolt. Now these are pretty heavy duty bolts, but 44 foot-pounds seems a little light. I am going to go a little heavier. I'm probably going to go like 65, I think. The other thing is the hub is being pulled onto this from the 4 bolts in the back, and then you have the axle and splines coming through here with a nut on here that gets torqued to 101 foot-pounds. So it's also pulling that hub that way. So everything's pulling that hub that way. So I kind of disagree with that guy's philosophy on this. Also, I wish I'd found this out before I took it apart, but I figured out that if I turn the wheel just slightly this way, I can actually get to all 4 bolts. Whereas before I was spinning it back and forth, getting to this one, and then spinning it this way and going to the other side. And what I found is, with the 3/8 drive socket, if I use this very short extension on a regular ratchet or on the torque wrench, I can get to this bottom front bolt pretty easily. And then that's the only one I can get with this setup. And then the other 3 I can get using a 3-inch or whatever this is extension. I can get to all of them that way. So I'm going to go ahead, now that everything's tight, flush, square, I'm going to go ahead and tighten these to 44 foot-pounds. And I just want to see what it feels like. Remember when I said when I took it apart, I thought it felt pretty light. So, let's see. Yeah, that's not much at all. So I'll go ahead and do all 4 of them. Oops. Let's go with the top. And back to $44, not much. I'm going to go ahead, like I said, I'm going to bump it up a little bit more. I'm not advising you in this video to do anything other than what's recommended, but I'm going to take them up a little bit tighter. I think I'm going to go to 60. Yeah, I'm going to go to 60. See how that feels. I just think that for suspension parts, I just think that it needs a little bit more. But I don't think that you should tighten them down anywhere near as tight as you can get them. And I'm sure I'll have some people that disagree with that, but that's okay. Okay, there's those 2. Over the top. And we'll change our extension for the bottom one. Probably blocking the camera, I have no idea. But hopefully you're getting the gist of what I'm doing. Alright, so those are all torqued. Now let's work on this wire harness real quick. See if I can get you in here and see it, what I'm doing. I'm not sure if you can see it or not. But these rubber grommets just slide into the steering knuckle here. You know what I think I'm going to do? I'll be right back. I'm going to go get a little bit of grease. Okay, let's get the wiring harness down. So we got this first grommet here, and goes into this. I hope you can see that. It goes into this little notch here. I'm gonna put just a tiny dab of grease on it just to give it a little bit of help getting in there because it's kind of a tight fit. Let's see if I can just push it in. And I can't quite get it in there. I'm gonna give it a little help with the screwdriver. I'm not poking on the wire, so don't freak out about that. I'm just helping the grommet along. We're trying to. I think it's in there. Okay. All right, got that one in. Now, this is why we left the old one connected. Let's see if I can adjust you up to see this one. Sorry for the camera movement. Make sure you can see what I'm doing there. So I left this one in just for routing purposes. So now we'll pop this one out, and we'll pop this one in, and we'll pop this one out, and we'll pop this one in. Okay, let's see if you can see this. I think you can see everything. So then it goes up to this next one, so I'll pop this one out. And that's the end of that old wiring harness. And we pop that one in. And then we bring this down. And remember the two holes? Hey chickens, those two holes there. So let's just pop into those two holes right there. And you're probably not going to see it very well, but I'm sure you can understand what I'm doing. Okay. And then we'll connect that connector. And then we'll put the caliper on. Alright. I'm going to put the nut on the axle nut on. I just got a wire brush in here. I'm cleaning out these threads a little bit because they were a little gummed up. And also, your trusty instructor just broke something, which I'll show you in a second. Okay, so you're not going to be able to torque this down. It gets torqued to 101 foot-pounds, but you can't torque it because the axle will spin, which I'll show you in a second. So we're just going to spin it on. If we were to try to torque this, it's just going to spin the whole thing like that. So we can't torque it yet. So we just got it on there semi-tight for the moment. Now we have to we'll put our rotor on. It just slides over those, and let's get the. I think I'm gonna shoot a little bit of. Let's see here. I don't know if you can see. Let me back you out a little bit here. Okay. Pull the caliper down. And slide it over the rotor, hopefully easily. Oh good, I was afraid I might have to back those pads off of it. Now we'll get our caliper mounting bolts. Okay. Now that one started. I'll bring you in here and show you. And I'll show you what I broke like a dummy. But it's fixable. Everything's fixable. So there's the caliper mounting bolt started. Of course, there's one on the bottom. So we'll put those on and then we'll tighten them up and torque them. I broke the connector to the ABS sensor. You know those two holes there you got to push this into? Well, I got a little too vigorous and broke that connector right here. See it? So what I'm going to do to get him back on the road, I'm just going to try some JB plastic weld to keep this thing secured, because it's making an electrical contact right there. But with all the vibrations of the vehicle and everything, it will pull out. So I'll JB weld that for now and order him a new speed sensor on me, because I broke it. Easy enough to replace. You just got to get down to, well, now you can't see it because I covered it with the rotor, but speed sensor it's just this wiring harness. Goes down, there's an Allen bolt that goes through and holds the sensor on. So you just pull that Allen bolt out, pull the sensor out, feed a new one up and in. So I just want to give you a full disclosure moment, because that's what this video is about, is learning. So learn from my mistake. Okay, let me get the other caliper bolt on, and then we'll come back and torque them. I already got the caliper mounted on there. The bolt's secured. Now we're going to torque them. And these get torqued to 136 foot-pounds. So let's see, the bottom's going to be the easiest way to get to them. My torque wrench is very long. Guess what? Oh, I think we can get it. Okay, there's the top one. Let's take the bottom one. We don't use the extension. Make sure you got that thing on there square. Okay. Caliper bolts are tight. Let me set up and we'll tighten up that spindle nut. Okay. Now the axle nut gets torqued to 101 foot-pounds. See these slots here? I got this big screwdriver. See how it fits in those slots? So again, you can't torque this because it'll spin. You could have somebody sit in the car and stand on the brakes. Not stand on them, but hold the brakes down. But what I'm going to do, since I don't have a helper, is I'm going to take the screwdriver, I'm going to put it up into that slot, and then as I tighten it, it'll hit against the caliper and stop the rotation of the wheel, or of the hub assembly. Whoops, sorry. The torque wrench is already set. All right. That's that torque. Now all I'm going to do is put our cotter pin in. Okay. Alright, let's do a temporary fix on our connector that I broke. Like a dum-dum. JB weld, plastic weld. Squirt out equal parts. If this was my car, I would leave it just like this. I would just epoxy this connector back together, call it good, and then if it failed, then I'd replace that sensor. But since I don't own this car and it was my mistake, I'll get him another sensor and put it on once it comes in. But at least this way, he'll be able to drive it without any kind of lights coming on. So if that's a wheel speed sensor or an ABS, anti-lock brake system sensor, and it controls the anti-lock brakes. So if it senses one wheel locking up, can you see the connector? I think you can. So if it senses a wheel locking up, like if you're sliding on snow or something, it'll sense that and activate your anti-lock brake system. I don't own cars with anti-lock brake systems because I just have a bunch of old stuff. Epoxy's really runny, probably because it's so hot out. I'm just gonna get, sheesh. I'm trying to work some up in there. Wow, it's really runny. So this is a bummer, but you know, that's what happens. Usually if you're gonna break a connector, you're gonna do it when you're trying to take things apart. So the fact that I broke a brand new connector, putting it together is quite the feat. So be careful and don't do what I did. This epoxy is supposed to set in 5 minutes. So I'll maybe be sitting here for a few minutes holding this thing together. I think I will be. I'm going to hold that square. So you don't need to watch me hold it. I'll be back in a minute. Alright. You ever seen somebody put on a wheel? I bet you have. So let's time lapse this shit. And go. All right. Take it for a test drive now. If everything works out, that'll be the end of this video. If there's a problem, I'll come back and we'll see what it is. So I'm going to assume this is the end of the video. And if it is, I hope it helps somebody. And I appreciate you watching. If it gave you some helpful tips, hints, whatever, give it a like, subscribe if you want. I do all kinds of different stuff. Well, say I'm working on old cars, but occasionally I'll do these kind of things for somebody. So take care, everyone. Thanks again for watching. Have a great day. Goodbye.